Now for something completely different. Howard has got one of the best British explorations of all time in Vietnam. Arguably, Howard, the biggest caves known in the world, but Howard will put a slightly different spin on that. So on that note, I'll pass over. Howard Limbert.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put a little spin on this. Yes, as Andy said, I'm going to show you some rather large caves, the giant caves of central Vietnam. And this is where it all began many, many years ago, in 1990. This is the village called Phong Nha. This is a photograph in 2016. What's special about this place is this large river that you can see, and all of it comes from cave systems. The road that you can see there is the Ho Chi Minh Road. That is the most bombed area in the world. And when the British team first came there in 1990, the village of about 3,000 people, unfortunately about 1,000 people died in the weeks that we arrived. This is because of malnutrition and malaria. And because of what British caves have done over the last 27 years, things have changed dramatically. And you can see now there's quite a lot of build-up and nice properties, and it's purely because of caves that made a huge difference to the area. British cavers have been caving for 27 years in the area, and yet we've only explored about 30% of the massif. The Kibang Massif is one of the largest massifs in the world. The reason why we've only explored 30%, it's very difficult access. It's long walks in, weeks walks in, and very difficult terrain. We've worked with Hanoi University of Science, over 18 expeditions, and every year we have new expeditions exploring other wonderful caves. We've actually explored over 600 caves in Vietnam and over 600 kilometres of new passage. And without a doubt, it's one of the greatest caving areas in the world. But what British cavers have done, and I'm really proud about this, is we've done an awful lot for the area, and we've also helped preserve the area by National Park and World Heritage status. We did a lot of work to preserve this, and caves in that area now employ directly over 2,600 people. On top of that, you've got the same again, such as restaurants and transport and hotels. So there's another 2,000 to 3,000 people. So most people in that area are involved with caves and tourism. In the last few years, we've been opening up caving adventure tours. And that employs over 500 local people, guides and porters. These are people who used to go into the jungle and used to collect wild animals and collect rare woods. These people have been taken out of the jungle, so massive conservation is happening. We, in fact, have taken 10,000 people last year. The company that I help run, we took 10,000 people on caving and jungle adventure activities. These are multi-day trips, so many, many people are getting insight into caving. We also work very closely with national parks and UNESCO to try to preserve this area, because it's an amazingly beautiful area. And British cavers have done so much for tourism in this area. It's promoted tourism. 5 years ago, there were no tourists visited this area. And only last year, 2016, the latest figures, 2.8 million people visited this area. And these are the reasons why. The caves are quite tremendous. Not all of them are suitable for tourists. This is a 200-metre vertical shaft that we got into some wonderful passage, but there's still wonderful giant caves. This is a particular cave that's nearly 50 kilometres long, this system, so it's a wonderful river cave system, and it has some amazing formations throughout. It's also got some fantastic dry passage, some wonderful stalagmites throughout. It's quite unique, is Vietnam. It has these amazing formations throughout. These are just two giant cave pearls that you can see that are just littered in the passage. Most of the caves that we find are giant river caves. Because it's not monsoonal, but has a heavy rainy season, there's only certain times a year we can visit the area. In the rainy season, which is basically from September to December, a lot of these caves are impassable with the amount of water. This cave we only discovered last year. A 4-kilometre, really nice large cave. It's the first phreatic cave that we've actually discovered in the area. Recently, we've been told of quite a number of vertical shafts. Now, the local people who take us to many of our caves didn't know we could descend. So now when they see we've got all this fancy equipment where we can abseil down and climb down these things, they're showing us lots of big vertical drops. And this is a 200-metre vertical drop that we only descended last year into a river cave system. So we're now starting to find many deep caves, and we've got over 1,000 metres of potential in the area, and there's lots more caves to be found. This particular area we discovered in 2010, so quite recently in 2010, and now it's one of the major areas for not only cave exploration, but we take quite a lot of adventure tourist groups through here. We actually did a film there, the latest King Kong film. So we have Hollywood, we had Hollywood over here, we did the King Kong film. So it's bringing a lot of money into the area. And they are fantastic caves. High density of stalagmite formations, a lot of river caves, absolutely brilliant caving, really good fun caving. And it's a little bit better than England in that the temperature in the caves is about 24 degrees and the water in most of the season is about 24 degrees, so it's not too unpleasant. It's just the walk into the caves a little bit dodgy. This is a cave that we only discovered last year, 5 kilometres long, all this sort of size, wonderful rock features throughout. So none of the caves that we really discover, we don't do an awful lot of crawling in Vietnam. Generally the caves are rather large like this. Quite a lot of swimming. You've got to like swimming in Vietnam, but it's really pleasant, like I say, about 24 degrees in the water. And it's very clear, very clean is the water, very, very pleasant conditions. This is an unusual cave we found only in 2012. We did a little paper with Tony Waltham, who I know he's here tonight. These tower cones are quite unique. They're formed underwater, so these stalagmites are formed underwater. And this is one of the best examples in the world of these tower cones. And they're only formed in these giant gower pools that you can see here, these giant gowers that are here. This passage here is about 85 metres wide, and there's about 1,000 of these littered throughout the cave. But what I really want to talk mainly tonight is about Hang Son Doong, because people are particularly interested about this cave that we explored very, very recently. But I'll tell you a little story about it. The entrance was originally discovered by a good friend of mine, Mr. Ho Kang, in 1990. Mr. Ho Kang came from a very, very poor family. His father died in the American War, and basically his family was starving. And he went out into the jungle by himself. He was a very good hunter, and he was going to collect some animals and bring them back to his family to eat. And he came back he went in 1990, he walked 6 days into the jungle, and he got caught in a really, really big thunderstorm. And he sheltered at the base of a 400-metre cliff. And at the base of this 400-metre cliff was a small hole in the ground with wind coming out of it and cloud coming out of it. And he thought nothing about it at all, because it had no interest to him. I met him in 2000, and I was talking to him saying, there really should be a big cave around here. And he told me about this cave, and we spent many expeditions trying to find this missing cave. And it was only in 2009, quite recently, that the first people ever had the chance to explore this cave. It was fully explored, or the vast majority were fully explored, in 2009 and 2010. And since then, we've done many promotional work, not only for the area, for the caves, such as Nat Geo, BBC, etc. And we wanted to save this cave, preserve this cave, because it is really special. There's really nothing quite like it. It's quite a unique cave. And they wanted to open it up for mass tourism. They wished to put a cable car all the way through the cave. And we proposed to do adventure tours and try and promote the area and promote this part of Vietnam, which has been very, very successful because it's the fastest growing tourist development, not only in Vietnam, probably Southeast Asia, and it's growing and growing. So the area is doing very well, and this area of this style of conservation is doing very, very well. And we're only allowed to take 500 people a year. And this is the journey to the cave, to Son Doong. There's only one way into Son Doong. You've got to walk down this beautiful river valley, and you visit this cave here. This cave is called Hang En. It was discovered in 1994. It was quite an easy cave to find because on the maps it has this enormous river hitting this limestone massif, and it had these wonderful words of disappearing river. So it was a bit of a giveaway. So you've got to walk down this river, crossing the river many, many times before you get to this cave. And you must go through this cave to get into the valley, this hidden valley where Sondong is. Hang En is a spectacular cave. Again, it's one of the biggest caves in the world. For example, it's 200 metres wide, is this cave here, and 140 metres tall. So it's quite large. And people always ask, why are the caves so big? You know, what makes them so big? And we did a little time-lapse photography, and hopefully this will explain why the caves are so big. In the rainy season, it gets a lot of water. This was quite a small flood. It actually, this year, it's gone up to about this level. It rose to about 80 metres. So it's a huge, huge catchment area, and it does flood incredibly bad. This is the exit to the cave. As you can see, nice, dry conditions, and then the rainy season comes along. This was a time-lapse that we did over about a 4-month period. But it is a truly spectacular cave. It's only 2 kilometres long, but it's just a giant cave just shooting through the mountain. This is the exit of that particular cave. And you can see in the distance there, we've got a number of porters going through the cave into this valley beyond. And this is where Sondong is. We had a good idea there was going to be a large cave because there's this giant cave here. The river goes down that valley. This particular cave is being quite famous. We took Warner Brothers down there the other year, and they did Peter Pan in this part of the cave. That's Never Neverland, which is a wonderful location, but a shit film. And this is just a short video to give you some idea of the terrain and the size of Hang En. That's the valley towards Sondong Cave down there. Okay, so we leave Hang En and we go into this wonderful river valley. It's a completely enclosed valley, and the only way into this valley is through that cave. If you follow this river downstream for about 3 kilometres, you come to a complete choke of boulders and trees. And we spent a couple of expeditions trying to find our way into a cave there, but we failed completely over many years. And it was only when Mr. Ho Kang finally found another entrance to Sondong Cave that we managed to find this amazing cave. And this is a very simple 3D map of Sondong. And obviously it's got this giant passage running all the way through it. But what really is special about Sondong and what makes it quite unique is these 2 door lines. These 2 door lines allow quite a lot of light to come in the cave. And we're very fortunate. It allows us to have wonderful jungles, and so we get lots of wonderful creatures coming into the cave, especially in the 2nd door line. But it's not just about size, it's the beauty of what you see within the cave. And hopefully the videos and the images that I'm going to show you will do it justice. To give you some idea of scale of the place, though, if you're in this river passage here and you look up to the top, the height there is just over 420 metres. So it's quite big. And this is the entrance to Sondong. This is at the base of the 400-metre cliff. And these sunbeams here are formed in the cloud that's coming out of the cave. The entrance is quite small. That's why it was not discovered until 2009, why it was not explored by ourselves until 2009. The entrance is only about 15 metres by 10 metres, which by Vietnamese standards is really quite small. And it's well hidden in the jungle. And you don't see the entrance until you're about 30 metres from the cave. However, once you get inside, you've got to climb down a 80-metre descent, and suddenly the cave opens up. And in the distance, you can hear a river. And once we actually found this on the original explorations, we knew we'd cracked it, and we knew we found a major cave because we'd got into the main water that we've been following for the last number of days. This may give you some idea of the scale of Sondong. It's from the camera to the daylight, which is the first door line in the distance there, that's 1.5 kilometres. You obviously can see a person there, and there's somebody up there as well. So it's 1.5 kilometres from the camera to the daylight. And it's a tremendous main passage. Because Sondong is so big, it forms its own cloud system. So you get these wonderful clouds going in and out of the cave, and it's very, very photogenic. Certain times of the year, it doesn't have cloud, and this is one particular time of the year. This was in February last year, where it gets very, very clear, and it's really good for photography. Again, you might see that stalagmite there. That's 70 metres tall. That's supposedly the largest stalagmite in the world. And so we're slowly moving in the cave towards the first door line. You can see the layers of cloud there. We do get a lot of cloud in this area because this is where the cloud is formed, because down in the bottom down here is a river. The heat comes down the door line shaft there, heats up the cloud, and it just comes all the way through the cave with a wind that goes through the cave. I don't know if you can make out here, but there's loads of tents there. That's our first campsite in Sondong Cave. When we take our clients through here, this is where they camp. It's a very pleasant place. Near to daylight, it's a very pleasant, sandy area. This gives you some idea of the scale. This is looking across from one side of the passage to the other. And I know Gina's been talking about the age of the rocks and things, but what's quite amazing about this area, the ages of the rock in this part of Vietnam, the rocks are the oldest in Southeast Asia. The rocks are 450 million years old. And these are some fossils. These are what are called tetracoral fossils, and they were extinct over 400 million years ago. So there's lots of interesting things that you can find in these wonderful caves. And we only discovered these 2 years ago. We took a geologist down and we found these, and there's many, many of them in the cave. And so he's dated them, and so we know these were extinct over 400 million years ago. So the actual rocks in the cave are up to 450 million years. The cave itself has been dated, and it's around 2 million years. Throughout the cave, there's lots of these little sand formations, which are very pretty because of the drips falling from the roof, which is often 100, 200 metres above your head. And it's got other fantastic features. It's not just about scale and size, but you can see the beautiful beds of limestone that are running at 25, 30 degrees, and you've got a fantastic spherical tube that's just cut through it. But I will give you some idea of scale. Back there is the campsite that we had where the tents were. And you can see this person here climbing up into the first door line. You see the jungle starting to appear. It takes around 1 hour to go from there to here. So it gives you some idea of scale of the place. When you get into the first door line, it's only got small bushes, small trees. This is because the hole at the top is relatively small. It's only 100 metres by 35 metres. So it's a limited amount of light that is allowed to come into the first door line. It's a beautiful place. It's really photogenic, and everybody really likes getting this particular photograph. Again, I'll give you some idea of scale. Obviously, you can see a person here. There's another person there, and there's another person there with flash guns. In the distance there is the second door line. That's around 1 kilometre away from the camera. And this is the smallest part of the cave. When you climb down to the bottom, it's just packed with beautiful calcite formations. These are what we call the green gowers. And once it's rained, or in the rainy season, these fill up with water, and they stretch for hundreds of metres, and they're really, really beautiful. And what is really nice about the place, we've got these fabulous sunbeams. Midday, if it's a sunny day outside, which is very often in Vietnam, you get these wonderful sunbeams coming into the cave, which make great photograph opportunities. And this is the area where, if you drop down to the river, which is just down there, the height of the cave is just over 400 metres at that point. So we leave the first door line and we go towards the second door line. The second door line is probably more famous. People know more about it because it's got a jungle in the cave. And when the first explorers went into the cave and they got into this part, all you could see were jungle and big trees, and they thought the cave had finished. And it's only when you climb up this 150-metre slope that you get to see that there's no way out of the cave. These cliffs on the right here are just over 250 metres tall. Some of the trees in this jungle grow up to 50 metres tall, and we get quite a lot of wildlife coming into the jungle here. We've had monkeys, we get a lot of hornbills, we've got snakes, we've got lots of critters and creatures that come into the cave. This is a Nat Geo shot that we took. We abseiled down from there, and we took a picture looking over the canopy. And that's the giant cave that's just disappearing off in the distance. Beautiful passage leading off. And often you get this cloud coming in, and it makes fabulous, fabulous pictures. This is the second campsite. We set this up now for tourism, and this is where the tourists will live and sleep. And we've got a beautiful view looking out into the jungle. It's very, very pleasant. We go further into the cave. Wonderful sights, you know, a ginormous cave with the jungle in the distance. And then it goes into the dark part of the cave. And this is interesting for science because in dark parts of the cave, it's quite easy to find new species. And it was only 2-3 years ago that we found 7 new species in this part of the cave, such as white fish, white scorpion, white spider, etc. It's also packed with calcite formations, giant calcite formations, because the main river now does not go through this part of the cave. So when you get big rivers in caves, they just wash the formations away. But in this part of the cave, the river's been missing for over 500,000 years, so we're getting these giant formations everywhere. After about 1.5 kilometres from the second door line, we reach a big lake. This lake is about 600 metres long. And then we can paddle on this lake and we get to a section of the cave that's 200 metres tall. And we called it the Great Wall of Vietnam because this section of cave stopped us in 2009. We could not climb here. And we came along in 2010 and it took 2 days of climbing to get up this wall. It's a 95-metre climb. And then when you get to the top of the Great Wall of Vietnam, the top at 95 metres, you can see an exit in the distance. That's about 500 metres away. As you can see in the foreground here, there's the bones. It's a complete skeleton of a deer that must have walked in here and finally died, and it's all calcited in. What I'd like to just finish off, because I know we haven't got a lot of time, is just 2 short videos which will hopefully do justice for the cave. The first one is by ABC, Good Morning America. And the second one is by a good friend of mine, Ryan DeBoot, and it's a nice, beautiful video which mainly done by drone filming, so hopefully you'll enjoy it and it'll give you some idea about Sondong. Thank you very much.
Well, I just said to Howard, bloody spectacular. So I think he has finished off the evening in true style. I have to say, maybe the largest explored cave passage in the world, probably. But there may be bigger ones. That's the beauty of caving. We never know. There may be bigger cave passages in the world.